They thought ruining my wedding over a missing $10,000 was a power move, a way to force me onto my knees before I even walked down the aisle. But when Marjorie Hale picked up that microphone and turned my humiliation into a spectator sport, she made a fatal calculation. She assumed I was fighting for a marriage license, when I was actually about to uncover the $1.6 million secret buried beneath their perfectly manicured lives. The fog in Seabridge, California, has a way of swallowing sound. It rolls in off the Pacific like a thick, wet blanket, muffling the crash of the waves against the cliffs and turning the upscale storefronts along Ocean Avenue into ghostly silhouettes. 3 days before my wedding, I stood on the balcony of the rental cottage we were using as a staging ground, staring into that gray void, trying to convince myself that the tightness in my chest was just excitement. It felt more like the pressure drop before a storm. I was 33 years old. I had a career I was proud of at the Harbor Light Community Fund. A fiancé named Ethan Hale, who made me laugh when he wasn't paralyzed by his mother's opinion, and a wedding binder that weighed 4 pounds. But as I stood there, shivering in the damp morning air, I felt less like a bride and more like a prop in a stage play directed by my future in-laws. Marjorie and Graham Hale did not plan weddings. They curated brand events. To them, the union of their son to Hannah Green was not a romantic milestone. It was a merger of aesthetics that required rigorous quality control. For 6 months, I had fought battles over napkin folding techniques, the font weight on the invitations, and whether the string quartet should play classic Bach or modern instrumental covers. I had compromised on everything to keep the peace. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself that once we said the vows, the Hales would relax, and Ethan and I would be left alone to build our life. I was naive. My phone buzzed on the railing. It was another text from the wedding planner, a woman named Chloe who seemed terrified of Marjorie. Mrs. Hale wants to know if the final vendor payments cleared. She says the floral account looks light. I rubbed my temples. The money was there. We had a dedicated joint account for the wedding expenses, funded by my savings, a contribution from my parents, and a matching amount from Ethan. I had checked the balance 3 times that morning. I heard the sliding glass door open behind me. I turned to see my older sister, Kelsey. She was holding 2 mugs of coffee, wearing one of my oversized sweatshirts. Kelsey had arrived in Seabridge yesterday, looking fragile and frantic, the way she always did when her own life was hitting a speed bump. "Coffee," she said, holding out the mug. "You look like you're about to jump." "I might," I said, taking the warmth into my hands. "Marjorie is micromanaging the bank accounts now. I have to log in and confirm the florist and the venue balance again. I just don't have the bandwidth." "Kelsey, I have a final fitting in an hour, and then the welcome lunch. And I still haven't written my vows, because every time I sit down..." Marjorie texts me about chair covers. Kelsey leaned against the railing, sipping her coffee. She looked out at the fog. "You know, I could handle that for you." "Handle what?" "The boring stuff. The payments." Kelsey turned to me, her expression soft, almost eager. "Look, I know I haven't been the most helpful maid of honor. I couldn't afford the bachelorette trip, and I was late to the shower. I feel bad about it. Hannah, let me do this. Give me the login and the folder with the invoices. I will sit here, drink free coffee, and make sure every single vendor gets their check confirmation numbers. You go to your fitting. Be the bride." I hesitated. It wasn't that I didn't trust Kelsey. Exactly. It was just that Kelsey's relationship with money was chaotic. She was always one paycheck away from disaster, always waiting on a break that never came. But looking at her then, I saw a genuine desire to be part of my happiness. She wanted to be useful, and I was so incredibly tired. "Are you sure?" I asked. "The venue balance is big. $10,000. It has to be precise. I can click a button." "Hannah," she said, rolling her eyes playfully, "I am not helpless. Go, let me help you. That is what sisters are for." I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for weeks. "Okay, thank you. The folder is on the kitchen island. The login is on a sticky note inside the cover." I hugged her. It felt like a release. I thought I was delegating a task to a supportive sibling. I didn't know I was handing her the weapon that would be used to execute my reputation. 2 nights later, the rehearsal dinner was held at the Gilded Anchor, a seafood restaurant that extended out over the water on a pier that cost more to maintain than my parents' house was worth. The room was bathed in amber light, smelling of lobster bisque and expensive perfume. The Hales were in their element. Graham Hale stood near the bar, holding court with a scotch in his hand, looking like a silver-haired senator. Marjorie was fluttering between tables, critiquing the centerpieces while pretending to greet her guests. I sat at the head table next to Ethan. He looked handsome in his charcoal suit, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. His knee kept bouncing under the table. "Mom is in a mood," he whispered to me, keeping his smile fixed for the room. "She says the venue coordinator was being difficult earlier." I squeezed his hand. "It's fine. Everything is paid for. We are 48 hours away. She can be in a mood all she wants." Marjorie tapped a spoon against her champagne glass. The sharp cling cut through the chatter. The room went silent. She walked to the small stage area where a microphone stand was set up for toasts. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice smooth and practiced. "It is so wonderful to see all of you here in Seabridge to celebrate Ethan and Hannah. We have family from all over the country. It truly is a gathering of different worlds coming together." I stiffened. Different worlds. That was her code for the fact that my father was a high school history teacher and hers was a venture capitalist. "However," she continued, her smile tightening at the edges, "we do have a few housekeeping notes before the appetizers are served. Weddings are complex machines, as we know." She looked directly at me. I assumed she was going to talk about shuttle times or photo schedules. "I just spoke with the venue coordinator for the ceremony site," Marjorie said. She paused for effect. "Apparently, there is a bit of a hiccup. The final balance of $10,000, which was due yesterday, has not been received." The room went deadly quiet. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at Ethan, then at Kelsey, who was sitting 3 seats down. Kelsey was staring intently at her bread plate, her knife scraping a tiny pattern into the butter. Marjorie laughed. A brittle, airy sound. Now, I am sure this is just a clerical error, but given that we are the hosts, it is quite embarrassing to have the venue threatening to lock the doors on Saturday. She lowered the microphone slightly, but not enough. It was still hot. She turned to Graham, loud enough for the entire front half of the room to hear. "This is what happens when you let people manage funds they are not accustomed to handling." It felt like a slap. My father stood up halfway, his face flushing red. I put a hand out to stop him. "Marjorie," I said, my voice shaking, "that payment was sent. Kelsey handled it 2 days ago. I have the confirmation." Marjorie looked back at me, her eyebrows raised in mock sympathy. "Well, dear, the bank says otherwise. Perhaps you should check your accounts before you accuse the venue of lying." Graham stepped forward then, taking the microphone from his wife. "Let us not ruin the dinner," he said, his voice booming with false conviviality. "I am sure Hannah can explain where the money went later. For now, let's drink." Where the money went. The insinuation hung in the air like smoke. He wasn't saying I made a mistake. He was saying I took it. I looked at Ethan. "Say something." I willed him. "Tell them I am not a thief. Tell them this is insane." Ethan looked at his mother, then at his father, and finally at me. But he didn't look angry on my behalf. He looked scared. "Maybe you should check the app." "Hannah," he whispered, "just to be sure." The betrayal was swift and absolute. I stood up, my legs trembling. "I am going to the restroom," I said. I walked out of the banquet hall, passing tables of whispering relatives. I pushed into the ladies' room and locked the door. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice before I could open the banking app. I logged in. My thumb hovered over the transaction history. Available balance, $412. I scrolled down. There was a transaction for $10,000 labeled Venue Final Payment. It was dated 2 days ago, but right next to it, in red text, was a status update I had never seen before. Pending reversal, insufficient verification, and below that, 3 transfers I didn't recognize. $500 to a generic holding company, $2,000 to a Cash App, Another 1,000 to a debit account. The money was gone. But it hadn't just vanished. It looked like it had been scattered. I dialed the bank's fraud line immediately, ignoring the fact that I was in a silk dress in a restaurant bathroom while my rehearsal dinner fell apart outside. I need to report unauthorized activity. I told the operator. My voice cracking, I waited on hold for 6 minutes. When the fraud specialist came on, she was clinical. Ms. Green, I see the activity you are referencing. We flagged the $10,000 payment because the account was accessed from a new device location that didn't match your profile history. And then the funds were moved in a way that triggered our laundering algorithms. What location? I asked. I was in Seabridge. My sister was in Seabridge. The login originated in Ridgeview, Nevada, the agent said. At 11:42 p.m. on Tuesday, Ridgeview, Nevada. I froze. Kelsey's ex-boyfriend lived in Ridgeview. She had spent 3 years driving back and forth to that desert town, dragging her drama with her, but Kelsey was here. She was in the rental cottage with me on Tuesday night, unless she wasn't, or unless she gave the login to someone else. I hung up the phone. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a ghost. I washed my face, fixed my lipstick, and walked back out. The dinner was continuing as if nothing had happened, which was the Hale way. Ignore the wreckage. Keep the schedule. I walked straight to Ethan. We need to talk. Now. We went out to the pier. The fog was thicker now, swirling around the lights. Ethan, I said, the money is gone, but not because I took it. The bank says someone logged in from Ridgeview, Nevada. Ethan rubbed his face. Ridgeview? Isn't that where Kelsey's ex lives? Yes. So you gave your sister the login, and she stole $10,000? Ethan's voice rose. Hannah, my parents are furious. Do you know how this looks? They think you are insolvent. They think you are trying to get them to pay twice. They have plenty of money. Ethan? I snapped. And I didn't steal anything. If Kelsey did this, I will fix it. But your mother humiliated me on purpose. She used a microphone. Ethan, she accused me of embezzlement in front of my grandmother. She is just protective. Ethan said. He leaned against the railing, looking away from me. You have to admit, it looks bad. You insisted on handling the payments yourself to prove a point, and now the money is missing. I stared at him. I insisted? I did no such thing. Your mother wouldn't let me hire an outside planner until the last minute, and then she micromanaged every invoice. Ethan turned to me. His eyes were cold, a coldness I hadn't seen before. It was his father's look. Did you know? He asked. What? Did you know Kelsey was going to do this? Did you guys need the money for something? Is there some debt you haven't told me about? The wind off the ocean felt suddenly freezing. You are asking me if I conspired with my sister to steal from my own wedding budget? Ethan shrugged, a gesture of helpless privilege. I don't know. Hannah, money makes people do crazy things, and you have been stressed. I realized then that the Hales had already won. They had planted the seed of unreliability so deep that even the man who was supposed to love me couldn't see the truth. I am going back to the cottage. I said quietly, do not follow me. The next morning, the nightmare expanded. I was sitting at the kitchen island in the rental cottage, staring at the empty coffee pot, waiting for Kelsey to wake up so I could demand answers. My phone rang. It was the main line for the Harbor Light Community Fund. Hannah, this is David. David was the executive director. He never called before 9 in the morning. Hi. David, is everything okay? I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I need you to come in. Now. I am actually off for my wedding. David. Remember? This isn't a request. Hannah, we have an emergency board meeting in 45 minutes. You are the subject. Be here. He hung up. I drove the 20 minutes to the Harbor Light offices in a daze. When I walked into the conference room, the atmosphere was funereal. David was there, along with the HR director and 2 board members I barely knew. Sit down, David said. He didn't offer me water. He slid a piece of paper across the mahogany table. It was a printout of an email. Subject, Misuse of Donor Funds, Hannah Green. To the Board of Harbor Light, it has come to the community's attention that your senior program manager, Hannah Green, is currently experiencing significant financial distress regarding her lavish wedding. We have reason to believe that reimbursements intended for the West Side Shelter project have been diverted to personal accounts to cover catering and venue costs. Please investigate immediately before the scandal becomes public. The email was anonymous. I looked up at David. This is a lie. This is a complete fabrication. Is it? David asked. He looked tired. Hannah, we got a call from a vendor this morning, a caterer, asking to verify a check written from a Harbor Light account. What? I gasped. I never wrote a check from here for my wedding. That is insane. The check number matches a reimbursement you processed last week. David said, Look, Hannah, I want to believe you. You have been with us for 5 years, but the allegation is specific, and the timing, well, people are talking in town. We heard about the scene at the rehearsal dinner. My stomach dropped. The gossip had traveled from the restaurant to my workplace in less than 12 hours. Seabridge was a small town, but not that small. Someone had made sure this news traveled. I am placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. David said, pending a full audit of your accounts and the shelter fund. David, please, I am getting married in 2 days. This will destroy my reputation. If you are innocent, the audit will show it, he said, standing up. But until then, you need to hand over your badge and your laptop. I walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with my personal items. I felt like a criminal. I had lost my money, my dignity, and now my job. And all of it traced back to the moment I handed that folder to Kelsey. I found Kelsey on the back patio of the rental cottage. She was painting her toenails, wearing headphones. She looked up when I slammed the sliding door open. We need to talk, I said. She pulled the headphones down. Jesus, Hannah, you look like a wreck. What happened? I told her. I told her about the bank. I told her about Ridgeview. I told her about the job. As I spoke, her expression shifted from confusion to defensiveness. She capped the nail polish slowly. So you think I stole from you? She asked. The login came from Ridgeview. Kelsey. Who else has your passwords? Did you give it to Marco? I didn't give it to anyone, she shouted, standing up. I was trying to help you. I sat here for 3 hours paying your stupid bills while you went to get fitted for a dress that costs more than my car. And this is the thanks I get? You logged in. Kelsey, the money moved. Maybe you messed it up, she screamed back. You are always so frantic. Hannah, Miss Perfect Career, Miss Perfect Fiancé, maybe you clicked the wrong thing and now you are looking for a scapegoat because you can't handle the idea that you made a mistake. I stared at her. This was her pattern. Deny, attack, reverse the victim and offender. Kelsey, I said, my voice low. If you did this, tell me now. We can fix it. But if you lie to me, I will never forgive you. You always think you are better than me. She spat. Mom and Dad always look at you like you are the golden child. Hannah is marrying a Hale. Hannah runs a nonprofit. Well, look at you now. You are a mess. Maybe you sabotaged yourself just to get some attention. She stormed past me into the house. I heard her bedroom door slam. I stood there, trembling. I had never felt so alone. My own sister hated me enough to twist the knife, or she was deluded enough to believe her own lies. Either way, she was gone. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Marjorie. Come to the house. We have a solution. I drove to the Hale estate. It was a sprawling Spanish colonial on the cliffs, overlooking the very ocean that was currently drowning me in fog. I was ushered into the library. Marjorie and Graham were sitting in leather wingback chairs. Ethan was standing by the fireplace, looking at the floor. He didn't look at me when I entered. Sit, Marjorie said. I sat on the edge of the sofa. We have discussed the situation. Graham said, the wedding is in 48 hours. Guests are arriving. We cannot have a cancellation. It would be a stain on the family name. So, Marjorie said, sliding a piece of paper across the coffee table. We are prepared to cover the missing $10,000, and we will make a call to your director at Harbor Light to smooth things over. Graham plays golf with the board chair. I felt a flicker of hope. Thank you, I said. I promise. Once the fraud investigation clears, I will pay you back immediately. Marjorie held up a hand. There are conditions. She pointed to the paper. I picked it up. It was a handwritten promissory note, but it wasn't just a loan agreement. Hannah Green, acknowledge that I have misappropriated funds intended for the wedding of Ethan Hale. I agree to repay the sum of $10,000 to Graham and Marjorie Hale immediately. Furthermore, I acknowledge that this financial mismanagement is my sole responsibility. I read it twice. The words swam before my eyes. You want me to confess to stealing? I asked. It is an acknowledgement of debt, Graham said. For our records. It says, I misappropriated funds, I said, my voice rising. If I sign this, I am admitting to fraud. I can't sign this. Then we cannot help you, Marjorie said simply. And frankly, if you cannot manage your affairs, we cannot support this marriage proceeding on Saturday. I looked at Ethan. He was still looking at the floor. Ethan? I said. He looked up, his eyes pleading. Hannah, just sign it. Please, it stays in the family. It's just paper. Mom and Dad just want assurance. We can sort out the truth later. It's not just paper. Ethan, I said, it's a confession. They are asking me to destroy my own integrity to save their party. It is to save our wedding, Ethan said. Don't you want to marry me? I looked at him. I looked at the man I had spent 3 years loving, and I realized he wasn't asking me to marry him. He was asking me to submit. He was asking me to buy my way into his family by selling my self-respect. The $10,000 wasn't the point. The money was a test. A lever. They wanted to see if I would bend. If I signed this, they would own me. Every time I disagreed with them in the future, they would pull this paper out. Remember when you stole from us? Hannah? I put the paper back on the table. No, I said. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I said no. I will not sign a false confession. I will not let you bully me. Then the wedding is off, Marjorie said. She stood up, and I will make sure everyone in Seabridge knows exactly why. I stood up too. My legs felt steady for the first time in 2 days. You do what you have to do, Marjorie. But I know I didn't take that money, and I'm going to find out who did. I looked at Ethan one last time. Are you coming? Ethan looked at his mother. Then he looked at the promissory note. He didn't move. I think you should go. Hannah, he said softly. I walked out of the library. I walked out of the house. I got into my car and drove down the long, winding driveway. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was alone. My fiancé had chosen his parents. My sister had betrayed me. My job was gone. My name was mud. But as I drove back toward the fog-choked town, a cold, hard resolve began to form in my chest. They thought they had broken me. They thought that by stripping me of my wedding and my reputation, they had turned me into nothing. They were wrong. They had just cleared the board. And now, I had nothing left to lose. I pulled over to the side of the road and looked at the banking app on my phone again. I took a screenshot of the pending reversal notice. I took a screenshot of the login time. Ridgeview, Nevada. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. Kelsey didn't have the sophistication to route money through holding companies, and the Hales were too ready with that promissory note. It was too clean, too scripted. I wasn't a bride anymore. I was a woman with a mystery to solve, and I was going to burn their perfect little world to the ground to find the truth. Saturday morning broke over Seabridge with a clarity that felt insulting. The fog from the previous days had burned off, leaving a sky so piercingly blue it hurt to look at. The ocean was a sheet of diamonds. It was the kind of weather brides prayed for, the kind that launched 1,000 Instagram posts. I woke up in the rental cottage not to the sound of birds or the gentle anticipation of my wedding day, but to the violent buzzing of my phone against the nightstand. It wasn't a call. It was a vibration that didn't stop, a continuous, angry spasm of notifications. I reached for it, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had slept for maybe 2 hours, a fitful, shallow rest haunted by images of bank statements and Marjorie Hale's smile. I swiped the screen open. The notifications were coming from WhatsApp, specifically. A group chat titled, Green Hale Wedding Logistics. This chat included my parents, Ethan's parents, the bridal party, and, for reasons that now seemed catastrophic, a handful of aunts and cousins who had been added for shuttle coordination. There was a message from a number I didn't save, but I recognized the profile picture. It was Ethan's Aunt Vivian, the one the family rarely spoke about, but the message wasn't from her voice. It was a forwarded screenshot. Can someone explain why the venue is saying the wedding is on hold because Hannah's side stole $10,000? Below that, a reply from a cousin in Ohio. Wait, seriously? I thought the Hales were paying for everything. Then a reply from one of Marjorie's friends, who shouldn't even have been in that chat. It is tragic. Marjorie is devastated. Apparently, the bride has some gambling debts. I sat up, the room spinning. Gambling debts? The lie had mutated overnight. It wasn't just a missing payment anymore, it was a character assassination. I typed a message, my fingers shaking so hard I hit the wrong keys twice. This is not true. There is a bank error. We are fixing it. I hit send. Immediately. A message popped up from my mother. Hannah, please stop texting. You are making it worse. Dad is sick to his stomach. I stared at the screen. My own mother. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was asking me to be quiet. I threw the covers off. My wedding dress hung on the back of the door, encased in a white garment bag that looked like a shroud. I didn't want to put it on. I wanted to crawl into a hole, but I had to go to the venue. I had to fix this. The venue was the Ocean View Bluffs Club, a pristine expanse of lawn overlooking the Pacific. White folding chairs were stacked in piles, not yet set up. The florist was there, unloading buckets of hydrangeas. But she wasn't arranging them. She was standing by her van, arms crossed, talking to the venue coordinator. When I pulled up in my rental car, the coordinator, a woman named Jessica, who usually wore a headset and a smile, walked toward me. She wasn't smiling. She held a clipboard against her chest like a shield. Hannah, she said, stopping 3 feet away from me, I am so sorry, but I have strict instructions from corporate. I cannot have the staff set the chairs or the arch until the balance is cleared. The check bounced. Hannah, it showed as a reversal. I know, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It is a fraud investigation. I told you this yesterday. Jessica looked down at her clipboard. I know, but Mr. Hale called this morning. He said that since the contract is in your name, the liability is yours, and he said he cannot authorize a payment from his side until... She hesitated. Until what? I asked. Until the internal matter is resolved. I looked past her. Marjorie and Graham Hale were standing near the pergola, looking out at the water. They were already dressed. Marjorie was wearing a structured navy gown that cost more than my first car. Graham was in a tuxedo. They looked serene. They looked like they were waiting for a show to begin. I walked over to them. The grass was soft under my sandals. I felt underdressed in my jeans and sweatshirt, small and unpolished next to their armor of wealth. Marjorie turned as I approached. She didn't look angry. She looked pitying. Hannah, she said, you look tired. I want this to stop. Marjorie, I said, you know I didn't take that money. You know this is a banking error or a hack. Why are you telling people I have gambling debts? Marjorie sighed, reaching out to brush a piece of lint off Graham's lapel. I didn't tell anyone that. Dear, people talk. Rumors fill the vacuum when the truth is complicated. She gestured to the stacked chairs. We have 200 guests arriving in 4 hours. Hannah, the caterer is holding the trucks. The musicians are waiting in the parking lot. This is a disaster. Then pay the vendor, I shouted, my voice cracking. You have the money. You can write a check right now and end this. I will pay you back the second the bank clears the fraud hold. You know I am good for it. Graham turned to me. His eyes were hard, lacking any of the warmth he had feigned during the engagement party. We don't know that. Hannah, we don't know anything about your finances, really, except that $10,000 vanished under your watch. Marjorie opened her clutch. She pulled out the folded piece of paper I had seen yesterday. The promissory note. We are willing to save you. Hannah, she said softly, I have a check right here for the venue. I can hand it to Jessica this instant. The chairs will go up. The music will play. You will marry Ethan. She held the note out. All you have to do is sign this. Acknowledge the debt. Acknowledge the mistake. It is a private family matter. Once you sign, we pay. And this whole ugly morning goes away. I looked at the paper. It wasn't just about the money. I saw that clearly now. It was a loyalty test. They were manufacturing a crisis to see if I would submit to their narrative. If I signed, I was admitting I was incompetent and dishonest. I was handing them a permanent weapon to use against me for the rest of my life. Hannah, remember when we had to bail you out? Hannah, maybe you shouldn't be on the school board. Remember your trouble with money? It was a collar. And she was holding the leash. I can't sign that. I said, it is a lie. Marjorie shrugged and started to put the paper back in her purse. Then I suppose we have to tell the guests to go home. Wait. I pulled out my wallet. I had a savings account, my emergency fund. It had $12,000 in it. Money I had saved for a down payment on a house. Money I had scraped together over 5 years of nonprofit work. It would wipe me out. But it would save my dignity. I will pay it. I said, I have my own money. I turned to Jessica, who had walked up behind us. Do you have a card reader? I asked. Jessica nodded. She pulled a mobile terminal from her pocket. I took out my debit card. My hand was shaking, but I swiped it. Processing. The little wheel on the screen spun. I held my breath. I looked at Marjorie. She was watching with a faint, amused smile. Declined. I stared at the screen. Try it again. I said, I have the funds. I checked this morning. Jessica swiped it again. Declined. Contact issuer. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I pulled out my phone and dialed the bank. My hands were slick with sweat. Ms. Green? The automated voice said. Please hold for the security department. When the agent came on, his voice was apologetic but firm. Ms. Green, your accounts have been frozen pending the investigation into the wedding account anomaly. Because your personal savings are linked to the joint account where the fraud originated, we have to lock everything down until the audit is complete. It is standard protocol, but I need to pay a vendor. I screamed into the phone. I am at my wedding. I am sorry, ma'am. There is nothing I can do. The freeze is system-wide. I hung up. I felt like the ground was dissolving under my feet. It wasn't just a trap. It was a cage. I was completely paralyzed. Kelsey walked up then. She was wearing her bridesmaid dress, a pale sage green that looked beautiful against her skin but felt mocking in the context of the disaster. She was holding her phone. Hannah, she said, I heard the card was declined. I looked at her. Did you do this? I asked, my voice a whisper. Did you get my accounts frozen? Kelsey flinched. Stop it. Hannah, I am trying to help. Look, I can call the bank. Maybe if I verify my identity since I was the one who logged in last, they will lift the hold. She held up her phone to show me she was dialing. As she did, a notification banner slid down from the top of her screen. I saw it for only a second before she swiped it away. But the name was distinct. Silverpin Title Services. Document preparation complete. I blinked. Silverpin Title Services? Why would my sister, who rented a studio apartment and leased a 5-year-old Honda, be getting notifications from a title company? And why on the morning of my wedding? Kelsey saw me looking and quickly lowered the phone. I will go make the call over there, she said, pointing to the parking lot. Too loud here. She hurried away. I stood there, the name Silverpin echoing in my mind. It didn't make sense, but nothing about the last 48 hours made sense. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Lena Park, my other bridesmaid and my best friend from college. Lena worked in commercial real estate. She was sharp, observant, and the only person here who didn't seem afraid of the Hales. Hannah, she whispered, don't look. But Marjorie is talking to the planner again. I didn't turn. What is she saying? Lena leaned in close. I walked by them a second ago. I heard Marjorie say, quote, if she won't sign, she won't marry in this family. It is better to break it now than let her think she has leverage. I felt a cold chill wash over me. She said that? Word for word. Lena said. Hannah, this isn't about the $10,000. They don't care about the money. Marjorie drops that much on a charity gala table. This is a hazing. I looked at Marjorie across the lawn. She was laughing at something Graham said. They looked entirely unbothered. They were breaking me for sport. Lena squeezed my arm. Where is Ethan? I don't know. I said, find him. Lena said, make him choose. Right now. I found Ethan in the bridal suite. He was sitting on the velvet sofa, his head in his hands. His tuxedo jacket was thrown over a chair. Ethan, I said. He looked up. His eyes were red. He looked like a little boy who had lost his mother in a grocery store. Hannah, he said, did you pay it? I can't. I said, my accounts are frozen. Your parents know that. Ethan, they are doing this on purpose. Marjorie is refusing to pay unless I sign a confession. Ethan stood up. He ran a hand through his hair. Then just sign it. Hannah, the words hung in the room, sucking the oxygen out of the air. Excuse me? I said. Just sign the damn note, he yelled. Who cares? It is just family paperwork. If you sign it, Mom pays the vendor. The guests come in. We get married, and we go to Hawaii. We can tear the note up later. We can explain it to them when everyone is calm. You want me to lie? I said, you want me to admit to being a thief? I want to get married. Ethan pleaded. He walked over and grabbed my hands. Hannah, look outside. People are arriving. My boss is here. Your grandmother is here. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Embarrassing for who? I asked, pulling my hands away. For you? Or for me? Because I am the one being accused of a crime. Ethan's face hardened. He looked so much like Graham in that moment it terrified me. You are making this difficult. Hannah, my parents are trying to help. They are offering a solution. You are the one letting your pride get in the way of our wedding. Pride? I whispered. It is not pride. Ethan, it is self-respect. If I sign that, I am telling your mother she owns me. And I am telling you that I will always back down when your family threatens me. Ethan looked at me. There was no fight in him, no righteous indignation, just a desperate need for the boat not to rock. If you don't sign it, he said, his voice flat, there is no wedding. I can't marry someone who would humiliate my family like this. I stared at him, the man I had loved for 3 years, the man I thought was my partner. I saw him clearly for the first time. He wasn't a partner. He was a hostage who had learned to love his captors. I stepped back. Then I guess there is no wedding, I said. Ethan flinched. He looked like I had slapped him. You are serious? He asked. Over $10,000? No. Ethan, I said. Over you? I walked out of the suite. I walked straight onto the lawn. The guests had started to gather near the entrance, confused by the lack of chairs. There was a low hum of murmuring. Phones were out. I saw a few people recording. Marjorie saw me coming. She smiled, expecting me to be holding the signed note. I stopped in front of her, the venue coordinator. Jessica looked between us, terrified. Did you sign it? Dear? Marjorie asked, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. No, I said. Marjorie's smile vanished. She didn't explode. She didn't yell. She simply turned to the crowd. She raised her voice, projecting with the skill of a seasoned hostess. Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. The murmuring stopped. 200 faces turned toward us. I am heartbroken to announce that the wedding ceremony today must be postponed, Marjorie said. Her voice wavered with a perfect, manufactured sadness. Due to unforeseen financial irregularities regarding the bride's accounts. We are unable to proceed. She paused, letting the words sink in. Financial irregularities, bride's accounts. We ask for your privacy and understanding as we help Hannah navigate this difficult time, she added. She framed it as a tragedy she was trying to mitigate. She framed me as a charity case that had failed. The silence that followed was heavy and physical. I felt 200 pairs of eyes drilling into me. I stood there in my jeans and sweatshirt, while everyone else was in their finery. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. a burning shame that felt like acid. I saw my father in the crowd. He wasn't coming to defend me. He was looking down at his shoes. I saw Kelsey. She was standing by the punch bowl, texting rapidly. I saw Ethan standing in the doorway of the bridal suite, watching. He didn't move. I was completely, utterly alone. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I simply turned around and walked toward the parking lot. I could hear the whispers starting up behind me, a rising tide of gossip that would wash over Seabridge within the hour. She stole the money. She's broke. The Hales called it off. I got into my rental car. I locked the doors. And only then, as I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, did I let myself scream. It was a silent scream, trapped behind my teeth, a vibration of pure, unadulterated rage. Night fell over Seabridge like a judge's gavel. I couldn't go back to the rental cottage. Kelsey was there. I couldn't go to my parents' house. My mother had texted me saying Daddy needs space to process this, so I was in Lena's guest room. It was a small room filled with boxes of her work files, but it was safe. Lena had ordered pizza I couldn't eat and poured wine I didn't drink. She was in the living room, fielding calls from the other bridesmaids, telling them to shut up or she would ruin them. I was sitting on the floor, my laptop open. The screen was the only light in the room. I had logged into the wedding account again. The bank had frozen the funds, but I could still see the transaction history. I needed to understand. I downloaded the raw data file. I wasn't a forensic accountant, but I worked with budgets at Harbor Light. I knew how to follow a spreadsheet. I looked at the $10,000 withdrawal again. Transfer to vendor, 38472X. I clicked on the details. The vendor wasn't a florist or a caterer. It was a shell notation. I traced the transaction ID. It didn't go to one place. It split. $2,000 went to a digital wallet. $3,000 went to a prepaid debit service. $5,000 went to a generic LLC account called Consulting Group A. Then, 4 hours later, I saw incoming transfers to an account that looked familiar. I pulled up a separate tab. I searched for Hale Family Holdings, the entity Graham used for his investments. I couldn't see their private books, of course, but I could see the wedding account's previous interactions. Wait, I squinted at the screen. The $5,000 that went to Consulting Group A? It was immediately transferred out again, and the routing number on the receiving end. I had seen it before. I dug through my physical folder of wedding contracts, the one I had saved from the cottage. I found the check Marjorie had written for the deposit 6 months ago. I compared the routing numbers. They didn't match the destination, but they matched the origin of a refund processed the same day. Someone had taken the money, split it up to trigger the fraud alert, and then moved the chunks into holding pens. It was layering. It was a classic money laundering technique designed to confuse the trail. Why would Kelsey do this? She didn't know how to layer money. She barely knew how to balance a checkbook. Lena walked into the room. She was holding a piece of paper. "Hannah," she said, "I have something." "What is it?" "I have a friend in IT security at my firm." She said, "I asked him to look at the IP login you told me about, the one the bank said was from Ridgeview, Nevada." "And? It's a spoof," Lena said. She sat down next to me. "The IP address resolves to a proxy server in Nevada." "Sure, but my friend dug a little deeper. He traced the packet origin. The latency was too low for it to be coming from out of state." "Where did it come from?" I asked. "Redwood Glen, California," Lena said. I frowned. "Redwood Glen? That is 20 minutes inland from here. It's a commuter town." "Exactly," Lena said. "It is local. Whoever logged into your account and moved that money wasn't in Nevada. They were right here, practically neighbors. They used a VPN to make it look like it was coming from Kelsey's ex-boyfriend's town." My blood ran cold. That means it was premeditated. I said, "Someone knew Kelsey's history. Someone knew about Ridgeview. And they set it up to frame her, or to make me doubt her, or," Lena said quietly, "someone hired a pro." I looked at the screen again. Silverpin Title Services, Kelsey's phone notification. Redwood Glen had a lot of office parks, a lot of back-office processing centers. "Lena," I said, Does Silverpin Title Services have an office in Redwood Glen? Lena pulled out her phone. She typed quickly. Yes, she said. Suite 404 on Sycamore Drive. I felt the pieces clicking together. It wasn't a picture yet, but it was an outline, a title company, a spoofed IP address, a layered financial theft designed to look like a family squabble. This wasn't just Marjorie being mean. This was an operation. My phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen. Dad. I picked it up, desperate for a kind voice. Dad? I found something. I think I can prove… Hannah. His voice cut me off. It was tight, strained. I just got off the phone with Graham. Dad, listen to me. The money was… He says you refused to sign a simple note. Hannah, he says you chose to make a scene rather than handle this privately. It wasn't a simple note. Dad, it was a confession. They wanted me to admit to fraud. And is that worse than what you did today? He asked. The question hit me like a physical blow. What? Is your pride worth humiliating us all? He asked. Do you have any idea how many people called me today? People from the club? People from the school board? You made us look like trash. Hannah, like we raised a thief who can't pay her bills. I didn't take the money. Dad, then why didn't you just sign the paper and fix it later? Why did you have to embarrass us on purpose? I realized then that he didn't care about the truth. He didn't care that his daughter was being framed. He cared that he looked bad in front of the Hales. The Hales had money. The Hales had status. And I had endangered his proximity to that status. I am sorry I embarrassed you. Dad, I said, my voice dead. I hung up. I sat there in the dark. I had no fiancé. I had no family. I had no job. But I had an IP address. And I had a name. Silverpin. I looked at Lena. Tomorrow is Sunday. I said, is Silverpin open on Sundays? No, Lena said, but the cleaning crew usually unlocks the side doors early. Good, I said. I wasn't crying anymore. The sadness had burned away, leaving something hard and sharp in its place. They had taken everything from me. They had stripped me down to the studs. But they forgot one thing. When you burn a house down, the foundation is the only thing left standing. And my foundation was built on something they didn't understand. I was done being nice. I closed the laptop. Let's get some sleep. Lena, I said, we have work to do in the morning. Monday morning in Seabridge was usually the time when the tourists cleared out and the locals reclaimed the coffee shops. But for me, it felt like waking up in a war zone where the shooting had stopped but the smoke hadn't cleared. I was technically homeless, definitely unemployed, and my engagement was suspended in a purgatory of silence. I drove my rental car to the address Lena had given me. It wasn't a glass-walled corporate firm downtown. Mercer and Blythe was located in a converted brick building on the edge of the industrial district, sandwiched between a muffler shop and a bakery that smelled of burnt sugar. I walked up the creaky stairs to the second floor. The reception area was small, cluttered with file boxes, and staffed by a woman who didn't look up from her typing. I have an appointment with Dana Mercer, I said. Hannah Green. The typist pointed a thumb toward the frosted glass door behind her. Go on in. She's expecting you. Dana Mercer did not look like the lawyers the Hales kept on retainer. She was in her late 40s, wearing a gray blazer over a black t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that pulled at her temples. Her desk was a chaos of paper stacks, but her eyes, when she looked up at me, were laser-focused. There was no pity in them. I appreciated that. I had had enough pity in the last 48 hours to last a lifetime. Sit, she said, gesturing to a wooden chair. Lena says you are in a hell of a bind. Defamation? And fraud. I said, sitting down, and wrongful termination. Maybe. My fiancé's mother accused me of embezzlement in front of 200 people. And then someone sent an anonymous email to my employer claiming I was misusing nonprofit funds. Dana leaned back, tapping a pen against her chin. The Hales, right? Graham and Marjorie? You know them? Everyone knows them, Dana said dryly. They are the kind of people who sue the city if a pothole scratches their Bentley. You are playing in the big leagues. Hannah, do you have proof? I pulled out my laptop and the folder of printed screenshots I had compiled with Lena the night before. I slid the bank transaction logs across the desk. I didn't take the money. I said, "It was moved. Look at the transfer patterns. It went out in chunks." Dana put on a pair of reading glasses and pulled the paper closer. She studied it for a long time. The room was silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the scratching of her pen as she made notes in the margins. After 5 minutes, she looked up. "This isn't theft," she said. I blinked. "What? I mean, it is theft," Dana corrected. "But it isn't a smash and grab. A thief who hacks an account to steal $10,000 transfers it to a burner account and withdraws it at an ATM. They don't do this." She tapped the paper. "See these split transfers? 2,000 here, 3,000 there." Then a pause. Then a bounce to a holding company. "This is layering. It is designed to make the audit trail a headache. It mimics money laundering." "Why would they launder $10,000? I asked. "That is pocket change to them, to make you look guilty," Dana said. "If the money just vanished, it could be a glitch. But this looks like someone trying to hide assets. If the bank sees this pattern associated with your login, their algorithms scream criminal intent. It was designed to trigger the freeze on your accounts." She took off her glasses. "You need to stop crying about the wedding. Hannah, you need to stop trying to explain yourself to people who have already decided on the narrative. You are not fighting a misunderstanding. You are fighting a forensic setup." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. "So what do I do?" "You stop arguing emotionally," Dana said. "You stop sending text messages to your fiancé begging him to believe you. You start documenting. I want screenshots of every text Marjorie sent you in the last 6 months. I want a timeline of every interaction regarding money. I want vendor statements. And we are going to file a formal request to the bank for a full audit trail, independent of the fraud department's automated review." She handed the paper back to me. "From this moment on, you are not a bride. You are a plaintiff. Act like one." I spent the next 6 hours in Lena's guest room, turning myself into a machine. I stopped looking at the photos of the flower arrangements I would never see. I stopped replaying the look on Ethan's face when he asked me to sign the note. I focused entirely on the data. I logged into the wedding planning portal, which, miraculously, hadn't been deactivated yet. I started downloading every invoice, every receipt, every contract. I was looking for the vendor who had been paid the missing $10,000, trying to find a contact name, when I noticed something strange about the billing history. Most of the early deposits, the photographer, the band, had been paid from the joint account Ethan and I shared, but the big-ticket items, the ones Marjorie had insisted on handling to help us out, had a different payer listed. I opened the invoice for the wedding planner. Chloe, it was for $8,000. Payer, Hale Family Holdings, LLC, method, corporate wire, memo, Project Blue, consulting. I frowned. Project Blue? I opened the invoice for the luxury portable restrooms. Payer, Hale Family Holdings, LLC, memo, Project Blue, site logistics. I sat back. Why was my wedding being billed to a limited liability company as consulting? I knew Graham Hale ran a private equity and investment firm. I knew he had various shell companies for real estate. But classifying his son's wedding expenses as business costs wasn't just tacky. It was potentially tax fraud. Unless the wedding was considered a business event. My mind raced back to 6 months ago. We had just gotten engaged. We were at dinner at the Hales' estate. Marjorie had been surprisingly warm, pouring me wine, talking about how sensible I was. Then, over dessert, she had slid a folder across the table, just a formality. Hannah, a premarital property agreement, to keep things clean. I remembered reading it. It wasn't a standard prenup. It had clauses that seemed excessive. It waived my rights to any future appreciation of family assets, and more strangely, included a non-disclosure agreement regarding business operations observed during the marriage. I had politely declined. I told Ethan I didn't feel comfortable signing an NDA to be his wife. Ethan had shrugged it off, saying, "Mom is just paranoid. Don't worry about it." Marjorie had pulled the offer back with a tight smile, saying, "Well, we can revisit it." I dug through my old emails, searching for agreement. I found it, an email from Marjorie, dated 2 days after that dinner. "Hannah, regarding the property agreement, if you are willing to sign, Graham and I are prepared to cover the entirety of the wedding costs, up to $150,000. Think of it as a gift for your peace of mind." I had never replied. I had just started saving my own money more aggressively. I looked at the invoices again. Hale Family Holdings, LLC. They were paying for it anyway, but because I hadn't signed the agreement, they had kept the control, and when the wedding got close, when I was legally about to become a Hale without having signed their NDA, they pulled the plug. The $10,000 crisis wasn't about the money, it was retaliation. It was the punishment for refusing to sign away my rights. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the invoice screen. Then I called Lena. She answered on the first ring. "I am at work," she whispered. "I am hiding in the supply closet." "What is it?" "Lena, I need you to look at something for me. You know that notification on Kelsey's phone? Silverpin Title Services?" "Yeah. I am still trying to figure out why a title company is involved." "I found something else," I said. The wedding expenses were being paid by Hale Family Holdings, LLC, and they were coded as Project Blue. "Project Blue?" Lena repeated. "That sounds like a development code. Developers use names like that before they announce a project to the public. Can you search public records for Silverpin? See if they have handled any transfers involving the Hales recently? Give me 10 minutes, she said. 10 minutes turned into an hour. I paced the small room. I felt like I was pulling on a loose thread that was going to unravel the entire sweater. When Lena called back, her voice was different, tenser. "Hannah, are you sitting down?" "Yes. Silverpin Title Services is a back-end processor," she said. "They don't deal with normal home sales. They handle bulk transfers, usually for investors moving distressed assets or doing quiet flips. It is not the kind of place you use to buy a starter home. It is the kind of place you use when you don't want anyone to notice the property changing hands." "Okay," I said. "And?" I ran a search for any recent filings linking Silverpin to the Hales. Nothing came up under Hale. They are too smart for that. But I searched by address. "Which address?" "The one you told me about a long time ago. You said Ethan took you to a beach house once. He called it Uncle Ron's place." "Right." I said. "It was beautiful, right on the water. But Ethan said his uncle was eccentric and didn't like visitors, so we only went once." "Hannah," Lena said slowly, "there is no Uncle Ron. Marjorie doesn't have a brother, and Graham is an only child." I froze. I knew that. Why hadn't I put that together? Ethan had lied so casually. I ran the title on that address. Lena continued. 4402 Ocean Drive. It was held by a trust for 10 years. But 3 weeks ago, right around the time your wedding stress started ramping up, the title was transferred. Transferred to who? To a new entity, Blue Horizon Ventures. Project Blue, I whispered. "And Hannah," Lena said, her voice dropping. "The transfer was processed by Silverpin Title Services. The assessed value of the property is $1,600,000. $1,600,000. My head was spinning. Why would they move a multi-million-dollar property right before my wedding? And why did Ethan lie about who owned it? And the kicker. Lena said, "The transfer documents?" They were notarized in Ridgeview, Nevada. Ridgeview, the same place my bank login was spoofed from. It is all connected. "Hannah," Lena said, "the money, the wedding, the property, they are moving assets around, and they used your wedding chaos as a smokescreen. I needed to talk to Ethan. I texted him, 'Meet me at the lighthouse, please.' Just 5 minutes. I'm not asking for money. I just need to ask you one question." He didn't reply for 20 minutes. Then, "Fine, but don't make a scene." The lighthouse was a tourist spot, but on a Monday afternoon, it was deserted. The wind was whipping off the water, cold and biting. I saw Ethan's car pull up. He didn't get out immediately. He sat there for a moment, probably steeling himself. When he finally emerged, he looked wrecked. He hadn't shaved, and he was wearing a hoodie I had bought him. looking like a college student who had just failed finals. He walked up to the railing where I was standing. He stayed 3 feet away. "Make it quick." "Hannah," he said, "my mom is on a warpath. She is talking about suing you for the catering costs. Let her," I said calmly. Ethan looked at me, surprised by my tone. He expected begging. He didn't expect ice. "I have a question." "Ethan, who is Uncle Ron?" Ethan blinked. He looked confused. "What? Uncle Ron?" "The one with the beach house on Ocean Drive. The one we visited last summer. Who is he?" Ethan shifted his weight. He looked out at the ocean. "He is a distant cousin of my dad's. I told you. Why does this matter?" "Because there is no Uncle Ron. Ethan, Marjorie doesn't have a brother. Graham is an only child." Ethan's jaw tightened. "It is just what we called him. He is a family friend, a business partner. His name isn't on the deed." I said, "The deed was held by a trust, and 3 weeks ago, it was transferred to a company called Blue Horizon Ventures. The transfer was handled by Silverpin Title Services. Does that ring a bell?" Ethan turned to me. His face was pale. "You have been digging," he said. It wasn't a question. "I found Silverpin on Kelsey's phone. Ethan, I found a spoofed login from the same town where the property transfer was notarized. Your parents aren't just mad about $10,000. They are moving a $1,600,000 asset, and they are using my wedding as a distraction." Ethan looked terrified. He looked around, as if his mother might jump out from behind a bush. "Hannah, stop. Please. You don't know what you are talking about." "Then tell me," I demanded. "Tell me why your parents' LLC is paying for our wedding planner under a consulting code. Tell me why you wanted me to sign that promissory note so badly. Was it to invalidate my rights? To make sure I couldn't touch the assets if we divorced?" Ethan grabbed the railing. His knuckles were white. "It is complicated. Hannah, it is family assets. I don't understand all of it either. Dad just has me sign things sometimes. He says it is for tax efficiency." "You sign things?" I asked. "What did you sign?" "I don't know. Documents, transfer authorizations. He said it was to protect my inheritance." He looked at me, his eyes wet. "Hannah, please, just let it go. If you keep digging, you are going to trigger something you can't stop. They will destroy you. They have lawyers you can't even imagine. Just walk away. Please, don't go nuclear. You are asking me to walk away from my reputation." I said, "From the truth, I am asking you to save yourself." Ethan whispered, "Because they won't stop." He backed away. Then he turned and walked back to his car. He didn't look back. I watched him go. I realized then that he wasn't evil. He was just weak. He was a man who had been groomed from birth to be a signature on a page, a vessel for his parents' wealth. He would never choose me. He couldn't. He didn't own himself. I had one more person to see. I found Kelsey at a coffee shop in downtown Seabridge. She was staring into a latte, looking small and miserable. She had been ignoring my calls, but I knew her habits. She always went here when she was hiding. I sat down opposite her. She jumped, spilling a little coffee on the table. "Hannah, I didn't think you were still in town. I am not leaving until I finish this. Kelsey." She looked down. "I am sorry about the wedding. I really am. I know you think I messed up the payment. I know you didn't mess up the payment," I said quietly. "I know you didn't steal the money. Kelsey, you don't know how to layer funds through shell companies." Kelsey looked up, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "You believe me?" "I believe you didn't plan the theft," I said, "but I know you gave them the login." Kelsey flinched. She looked at her hands. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Just tell me the truth." Kelsey started to cry. It was a quiet, pathetic sound. "Marjorie called me. She whispered, about a month ago. She said she was worried about you. She said you were getting in over your head with the wedding costs. And she said she wanted to help, but you were too proud to accept it. She asked if I could help her. Monitor things, just to make sure you didn't crash and burn." I stared at her. "And you believed her?" "She was nice to me." "Hannah," Kelsey cried. "She took me to lunch. She told me I had potential. She said she knew a developer in Ridgeview who was looking for a project manager, a real job. Hannah, with benefits. And she said she knew of a foreclosure coming up that she could help me get into, a house. I felt a wave of nausea, a job and a house lead. That was the price of my sister's loyalty. So you gave her my banking login? She said she just wanted to deposit money. Kelsey sobbed. She said she wanted to surprise you and pay off the vendors. I thought I was helping. And the notification from Silverpin? I asked. She sent me a document to sign. Kelsey said, an NDA. She said it was standard because of the job offer. I had to use that app to sign it. I sat back. It all made sense. They had played her like a fiddle. They used her insecurity, her jealousy of my success, her desperation for stability. They baited the hook with a life she couldn't afford, and she swallowed it whole. When did you realize it was a trap? I asked. At the rehearsal dinner, she whispered. When she announced the money was missing, I looked at her, and she winked at me. Hannah, she winked, and then she texted me and said if I said a word, the job offer was gone, and she would tell everyone I stole the money. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled it away. I am so sorry. Hannah, I was just so tired of being the screw-up. I wanted to be the one who fixed things for once. I looked at my sister. I saw the fear in her eyes. I saw the lifelong chip on her shoulder that had finally weighed her down enough to drown her. I wasn't screaming angry anymore. My anger had cooled into something solid and heavy, like a stone in my chest. You didn't fix anything. Kelsey, I said, you broke the only person who actually loved you. I stood up. Hannah, wait. What are you going to do? I am going to finish what Marjorie started. I said. I walked out of the coffee shop. I didn't hate Kelsey. I pitied her, and that felt worse. My phone buzzed as I got into the car. It was Dana. Hannah, can you come back to the office? I will be there in 10 minutes. When I walked back into Mercer and Blythe, Dana was standing at the whiteboard, drawing a timeline. I got the preliminary headers from the email sent to Harbor Light. She said without turning around, the defamation email, and? My IT guy ran a comparison against the device signature from the bank login, the one that spoofed the Nevada IP. I held my breath. It is a match. Hannah. She turned around, capping the marker. The same device that accessed your bank account to launder the $10,000 was used to send the email that got you suspended from your job. This proves it wasn't a random hacker, and it wasn't a disgruntled donor. It was a coordinated attack from a single source. And since we know Kelsey gave the login to Marjorie, I said. Dana nodded. It means Marjorie Hale, or whoever she hired, didn't just want to stop the wedding. She wanted to destroy your credibility entirely. She wanted to make sure that even if you figured out the financial trick, no one would believe you because you would be the disgraced, unemployed woman who stole from charity. Why? I asked. Why go to that length? Because of the property, Dana said. The $1,600,000 beach house. If they are moving assets to hide them, maybe from the IRS, maybe from investors, they need you gone. You were getting too close. You were the new wife who refused to sign the NDA. You were a liability. She tapped the whiteboard. They tried to bury you, Hannah, but they made one mistake. What? They assumed you would stay buried. Dana picked up a file from her desk. I drafted 3 letters while you were gone. One to the bank demanding the full audit. One to Harbor Light, demanding a forensic review of the email origin, and one to the Hales. To the Hales? A preservation of evidence letter, Dana said, a shark-like smile touching her lips. We are putting them on notice. If they delete one email, if they shred one document, they go to jail for spoliation of evidence. She handed me the pen. Ready to go to war? I took the pen. I thought about Ethan's cowardice. I thought about Kelsey's betrayal. I thought about Marjorie's wink. I signed the engagement letter. I am ready. I said. Tuesday morning brought a low, gray sky that pressed down on the rooftops of Seabridge, stripping the color from the bougainvillea and making the ocean look like a sheet of hammered lead. I sat in my rental car in the parking lot of the Harbor Light Community Fund. staring at the brick facade of the building where I had spent the last 5 years building a career. My ID badge was in my glove compartment. Surrendered. My laptop was in an evidence locker somewhere inside. I was here because David, my director, had called me for a follow-up regarding the board's position. I walked in. The receptionist, a girl named Sarah whom I had hired and trained, couldn't meet my eyes. She pretended to be very interested in a stack of mail. "You can go right back." "Hannah," she mumbled. "They are in the boardroom. They, plural." I walked down the hallway, the familiar smell of floor wax and stale coffee making my stomach turn. Inside the boardroom, David wasn't alone. Sitting at the head of the table was Evelyn Cross. Evelyn was not just a board member, she was the gatekeeper of Seabridge Society. Her husband developed commercial real estate, and she chaired the Civic Circle, the same organization that gave Marjorie Hale her Philanthropist of the Year awards. Evelyn wore a cashmere cardigan that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and her smile was a thin, dangerous line. "Sit down, Hannah," Evelyn said. I sat. I didn't apologize. I didn't ask how they were. "We have reviewed the situation," David began, looking uncomfortable. He tapped a folder on the table. "The anonymous email regarding the misappropriation of funds is concerning." "It is a lie," I said. "I told you that on Friday. It is a specific allegation." Evelyn cut in, her voice smooth and cool, like a stone skipped over water. "And unfortunately, Hannah, in our world, perception is reality. We rely on the trust of our donors. When rumors start circulating that a senior program manager is having financial trouble significant enough to halt a wedding, it makes our donors nervous." I looked at her. "Who is nervous? Evelyn? Or did Marjorie Hale just call you?" Evelyn's expression didn't change, but the air in the room grew colder. "Marjorie is a respected member of this community," she said, "and she is understandably distraught. But this isn't about Marjorie. This is about the integrity of Harbor Light. People in Seabridge talk. Hannah, they are saying you have debts. They are saying you pressured your family. They are lying." I said, "It doesn't matter," Evelyn said, leaning forward slightly. "The board feels that, given the current noise surrounding your personal life, your presence here is a distraction. We are extending your administrative leave indefinitely, without pay." "Indefinitely?" I asked. "That is a soft firing." "Evelyn, we prefer to think of it as a cooling-off period," she said. "Until you can clear your name. If you can clear your name." She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "You know, Hannah," she added, pausing by the door, "Marjorie was very fond of you. It is a shame you couldn't find a way to work things out within the family. Public spectacles are so distasteful." I realized then that the Hales weren't just attacking my bank account, they were salting the earth. They had the social reach to choke my reputation quietly, over tea and board meetings, until I was unemployable in this town. Evelyn Cross wasn't protecting the nonprofit. She was enforcing the social order. I walked out of the building. I didn't look back. I had lost the job. But I had gained a crucial piece of intelligence. The Hales were using their network to isolate me. They wanted me destitute and shamed so I would disappear, but they had miscalculated. They thought taking away my paycheck would make me beg. Instead, it gave me the time to hunt. I drove straight to Mercer and Blythe. Dana was waiting for me, and the atmosphere in her office was the opposite of Harbor Light. It was messy, loud, and aggressively productive. "Did they fire you?" Dana asked as I walked in. "Indefinite unpaid leave," I said. "Evelyn Cross was there. She basically told me I should have submitted to Marjorie." Dana snorted. "Evelyn Cross is a shark in pearls. Sit down. We are going on the offensive." She handed me 3 thick envelopes. "Letter 1, she said, tapping the first envelope, "to the bank. We are demanding the full technical audit trail, specifically the IP logs and the device MAC addresses for every login in the last 30 days. We are also flagging the account for layering activity, which legally forces them to investigate for money laundering compliance. They can't ignore that." "Letter 2, she continued, "to Harbor Light. We are informing them that their decision to suspend you based on an anonymous email without due process is a violation of your employment contract and potential defamation per se. We are demanding they preserve the metadata of that email. If it came from the same source as the bank hack, they are liable for harboring a hostile actor. And letter 3? I asked. Dana smiled. A sharp, predatory expression to Graham and Marjorie Hale, a formal demand for the preservation of evidence. We are notifying them that we are preparing a lawsuit for tortious interference, defamation, and fraud. We are demanding they preserve all communications, texts, emails, internal memos regarding your wedding, your employment, and a specific entity called Hale Family Holdings, LLC. She pushed the envelopes across the desk for me to review. Paperwork replaces pleading. Hannah, she said, you can cry to Ethan until you are blue in the face and he won't hear you. But when Graham Hale gets a certified letter mentioning spoliation of evidence and RICO statutes, he is going to listen. I looked at the letters. They looked like shields. Send them. I said, that afternoon, I met Lena at the public library. It was the only place we could work without paranoia. We took a table in the back corner, surrounded by reference books. Lena had her laptop open. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright with the thrill of the chase. Okay, she whispered. I went down the rabbit hole on Silverpin Title Services. What did you find? They are a ghost, Lena said. They have an office in Redwood Glen, but it is just a mail drop and a server room. No reception, no agents. They exist solely to process paperwork for other entities. But I tracked the notary who signed off on the transfer of the Seabridge Beach House. The $1,600,000 property? Exactly. The notary is a guy named Silas Vane. He lost his license 3 days after he notarized that deed. Why? Misconduct, Lena said. Falsifying presence. He was notarizing documents for people who weren't in the room. I leaned in. So the transfer of the beach house from the trust to Blue Horizon Ventures might be illegal? Potentially voidable. Lena said, but here is the bigger catch. I pulled the articles of incorporation for the trust that owned the house originally. The Harborstone Revocable Trust. Who are the trustees? I asked. It is blind, Lena said. Managed by a corporate trustee, but I found an amendment filed with the county clerk. She turned her laptop screen toward me. The Harborstone Revocable Trust was amended 6 months ago. The amendment changed the beneficiary structure. And look at the date. I looked at the date. October 12th, I felt a chill. That was the week we got engaged. That was the week Marjorie first mentioned the premarital property agreement. They changed the trust the week you got engaged, Lena said. And then they tried to force you to sign a document waiving your rights to investigate family assets. Hannah, that house isn't just a vacation home. It is a vault. They are hiding something in it, or the ownership of it is toxic. If I had married Ethan without the prenup, I said slowly, I would have had a claim on marital assets, or at least, as his wife, I might have seen a tax return. Exactly, Lena said. They couldn't risk you seeing the Harborstone Trust. So they tried to lock you out with the agreement. When you refused to sign, they panicked. They had to move the asset out of the trust, hence the transfer to Blue Horizon Ventures, and they had to get rid of you before the wedding. The $10,000 theft wasn't just punishment. I realized it was an ejection seat. They needed the wedding canceled. I said, because if I became Hannah Hale, I became a legal liability. Lena nodded. And the defamation? The attack on your job? That was to make sure that if you ever did talk, you would look like a disgruntled, broke, lying ex-fiancé. I sat back in the library chair. The silence of the room felt heavy. It was a massive, intricate machine built to crush one person. Is there any link between Silverpin and the Hales? I asked. Direct proof? Not on paper, Lena said. But look at this. She pulled up a map. This is the registered address for Blue Horizon Ventures. It is a suite in an office park in Nevada. Ridgeview? I asked. No, Lena said, but close. But look who else is registered in that same suite. She pointed to a list of companies. Hale Family Holdings, West Division. There it is, I whispered. Graham Hale was paying rent for the company that bought the house from his own trust. He was selling the house to himself. Why? Lena asked. Why wash a property like that? To reset the value, I said, or to hide the true source of the funds used to buy it originally. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the pier. Alone. Don't tell Ethan. Vivian. The pier was windy and cold, the seagulls screaming overhead. Vivian Hale was standing near the end, smoking a cigarette with quick, nervous drags. She was Graham's younger sister, the black sheep, who had been cut off years ago for marrying a jazz musician the family didn't approve of. I walked up to her. She looked like a harder, worn-down version of Marjorie, with the same sharp cheekbones but none of the polish. You are causing a hell of a stir. Hannah, she said, blowing smoke out to sea. They destroyed my life. Vivian, I am just returning the favor. Vivian laughed, a harsh, barking sound. You think this is about you? You think Graham and Marjorie care enough about you to build a conspiracy? You are just collateral damage. Honey, then what are they fighting for? I asked. Vivian turned to me. Her eyes were dark and tired. They are not fighting you over $10,000, she said. They are fighting you over what you might notice. What might I notice? The beach house? Vivian froze. She dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her boot. You know about the house? I know it was transferred from the Harborstone Trust to Blue Horizon Ventures. 3 weeks ago, I know the notary was crooked. I know Silverpin Title Services handled it. Vivian stared at me. You are smarter than the last one. The last one? Ethan's last serious girlfriend, Vivian said. She started asking questions about the trust, too. She disappeared pretty quickly, moved to London. Vivian leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. Listen to me. Hannah. Years ago, before Graham got respectable, he did a lot of property flips, fast cash, shaky permits. There was one development, a coastal project. It went wrong. There were environmental fines, zoning bribes, big stuff. If it came out, he would lose his license. He would lose the firm. And the beach house? It is the collateral, Vivian said. That house was bought with the dirty money from that project. It is the one asset that ties the clean money to the dirty money. If anyone audits the chain of title on that house, the whole empire unravels. So they keep moving it. I said, from trust to shell company to trust. Exactly. And they keep the circle tight. Ethan doesn't even know. He is just a signature. But you are an accountant type. You work in nonprofits. You look at ledgers. Marjorie was terrified you would see the tax bills, Vivian said. That is why she pushed the prenup. When you said no, she decided you had to go. Vivian checked her watch. I have to go. If they see me talking to you, they will cut my stipend. And unlike you, I don't have a backbone. Vivian, wait. I said, why are you telling me this? She paused. Because Marjorie looked at me at the rehearsal dinner when she humiliated you. She looked at me and smiled, and I remembered what she did to me 20 years ago. She pulled her coat tighter. Burn them. Hannah, but be careful. They are scared, and scared people are dangerous. I drove back to Lena's apartment with my head buzzing. The stakes had shifted from personal grievance to corporate crime. When I got to the guest room, my laptop pinged. It was an email from Dana. Subject: Bank Audit. Preliminary Packet. I opened it immediately. Hannah, we got the first round of logs from the bank's security team. They moved fast because I threatened the regulator. Look at the attachment. I opened the PDF. It was a technical log of the login session that drained the $10,000. Session start, Tuesday, 11:42 p.m. IP address, masked, spoofed via Ridgeview proxy, device ID, iPhone 13 Pro, method, password reset. I frowned. Password reset? I read further. User requested password reset via forgot password link, two-factor authentication, bypassed via email recovery. Recovery email. Used, Hannah, green88gmail.com. I stared at the screen. My email was Hannah, green88gmail.com, no E at the end of green. Someone had created a fake email account that looked almost identical to mine. They had added it to my bank profile as a recovery method, then used it to reset my password and lock me out while they moved the money. But to add a recovery email, you needed to verify it with a phone code sent to the primary number on file. My number. I hadn't received a code that night. I scrolled down. Primary phone number changed. Tuesday, 10:15 a.m. New number ending in 8902. Change authorized by call to customer service. Verification provided. Mother's maiden name and social security number. I felt sick. Whoever did this knew my social security number. They knew my mother's maiden name. I looked at the number ending in 8902. It looked familiar. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. It wasn't a current number. It was an old one. I typed 8902 into the search bar. One result came up. Dad, old cell. I stopped breathing. My father, Mark Green, had changed his number 2 years ago, but he had kept the old line active on a cheap plan for emergencies and for his two-factor authentications. The recovery number used to hijack my bank account belonged to my father. I drove to my parents' house. It was dark. The windows were glowing with warm, yellow light. It looked like the home I had grown up in, a place of safety and Sunday dinners. Now it looked like a facade. I used my key to let myself in. My parents were in the living room watching television. My mother jumped when she saw me. "Hannah," she said, hand to her chest. "We didn't know you were coming." "Where is Dad?" I asked. Mark looked up from his recliner. He looked older than he had a week ago. "Hannah," he said heavily, "we aren't really up for a visit right now. The neighbors are still asking questions about the wedding." I walked over to him. I held up my phone. The PDF of the bank log displayed on the screen. "Did you give Kelsey your old phone?" "Dad?" Mark froze. He looked at the phone, then at my mother, then back at the TV. "What?" he asked, his voice cracking. "The phone ending in 8902, I said. "Did you give it to Kelsey? Or did you authorize the number change on my bank account yourself?" Mark's face went gray. He stood up, his knees popping. "Hannah, listen. You helped her." I whispered. "You helped them rob me. I didn't know it was robbery." Mark shouted. A sudden burst of defensive anger. "Kelsey came to me. She said you were locked out of your account. She said you were stressed and panicking about the vendors. She asked if she could use my old number as a backup to get back in because your phone was acting up." "And you believed her?" I asked. "You gave her my social security number?" "She is your sister," Mark yelled. "I thought I was helping. She said Marjorie needed the payments cleared that night. I didn't want the Hales to think we were incompetent." "Hannah? So you gave the keys to my life to the people destroying it." I said, "Because you were afraid of what Marjorie Hale would think of you." Mark slumped back into the chair. "I didn't know." He mumbled, I wanted to fix it." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had paid for my college applications. I saw a coward. A man so desperate for social approval, so terrified of conflict, that he had handed his daughter over to the wolves without asking a single question. Betrayal isn't always a dagger in the back. Sometimes it is just a door left unlocked by someone too weak to hold the handle. I looked at my mother. She was crying silently, but she didn't say anything. She wouldn't go against him. "I am leaving." I said, "Hannah, please," Mark said, reaching out. "Don't," I said. "You wanted to be in good standing with the Hales? Congratulations. You helped them commit a federal crime. When the police come, tell them you were just trying to help." I walked out of the house. I left my key on the entry table. I sat in my car down the street. I didn't cry. The tears were gone. I had the bank logs. I had the IP address. I had the trust documents. I had the motive. And now, I had the method of the hack. I couldn't win this by arguing morality. The Hales didn't have morals, and my family didn't have a spine. I needed a narrative, a story so clean, so documented, so undeniable, that not even Evelyn Cross could spin it. I opened my laptop right there in the car. I started a new document, timeline of events. 1. October 12. Harborstone Revocable Trust amended. Premarital agreement proposed to Hannah Green. 2. October 15th. Hannah Green refuses agreement. 3. October 20th. Hale Family Holdings LLC begins paying wedding vendors under Project Blue. 4. November 5th. Beach House, 4402 Ocean Drive. Transferred to Blue Horizon Ventures via Silverpin Title Services, notarized by suspended agent. 5. November 3rd. Kelsey Green requests access to Mark Green's device. 6. November 4. Fraudulent recovery email created. Bank account compromised. 7. November 5. $10,000 laundered via layering technique. 8. November 6. Defamation email sent to Harbor Light from same device. It was all there, a straight line from the trust to the theft. I closed the laptop. Dana was right. Paperwork replaced pleading. I wasn't going to sue them yet. That would take years. I was going to do something faster. I was going to walk into the lion's den and show them that the prey had brought a gun. I put the car in gear. I had a meeting to schedule. And for the first time in 5 days, I wasn't afraid. They should be. Wednesday brought rain. It was a cold. Driving rain that lashed against the windows of Dana Mercer's office, turning the view of the industrial district into a smear of gray and rust. I sat in the wooden chair across from Dana's desk, my hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee, watching her read a document that had just come off the fax machine. Dana was old school. She didn't trust email for the sensitive stuff. She liked paper. Paper had weight. Paper left a trail. She looked up, her glasses sliding down her nose. "We have them," she said quietly. I sat up straighter. "What is it?" Dana slid the document across the desk. It was a copy of the deed transfer for the Seabridge property, the $1,600,000 beach house that had moved from the Harborstone Revocable Trust to Blue Horizon Ventures 3 weeks ago. "Look at the signature page," Dana said, tapping the bottom corner with a red pen. I looked. The notary stamp was blurry but legible. Silas Vane, Notary Public, Briar Cove County. "I ran a check on Mr. Vane this morning," Dana said. Her voice was tight with satisfaction. Briar Cove County suspended his commission 4 days after this document was signed. "Do you know why?" "Why? Pattern of misconduct," she said. "Specifically, notarizing documents without the signatories present. This transfer? It is legally brittle. If the notary was suspended for fraud during the same week he stamped this, the entire chain of title is open to challenge." She pulled another sheet from a folder. "And then there is this." It was a spreadsheet. An internal ledger from Hale Family Holdings LLC. It looked like the kind of thing that shouldn't have left the office. But Dana had a way of getting things. "Look at the line items for October," she said. I scanned the rows: consulting fees, legal retainers, site development, and then, buried in the middle, Project Blue, event consulting, $8,000. I recognized the amount. It was the exact cost of the wedding planner. And below that, Project Blue, site logistics, $10,000. That was the venue fee. The missing $10,000. I looked up at Dana, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "They wrote off my wedding." I said. "They didn't just write it off." "Hannah," Dana said, "they categorized it as a business expense for a shell company. They used your wedding to move money out of Hale Family Holdings and into the hands of vendors. But they coded it as consulting to lower their taxable income." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "It means your wedding wasn't a personal event to them. It was a laundering vehicle. They were moving cash, creating deductions, and probably hiding the liquidity from someone, maybe the IRS, maybe an investor. And when you refused to sign the prenup, you threatened to become a witness to their creative accounting. So they blew it up." I said, "Exactly. They couldn't have a daughter-in-law who might get subpoenaed in a tax audit if the marriage went south. They needed you discredited and distant." I stared at the spreadsheet. It was so clinical. My heartbreak, my humiliation, the destruction of my reputation. It was all just a line item on a ledger titled Project Blue. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't know. "Check your encrypted app. V." I opened the secure messaging app I had downloaded after meeting Vivian Hale at the pier. There was a single image waiting for me. It was a photo of a small brass key, the kind you use for a safe deposit box. The tag attached to it was yellowed with age, and on it, in fading blue ink, was written one word: Harborstone. Below the image, Vivian had typed, "Marjorie thinks this is lost. She panicked 5 years ago when the bank branch on 4th Street closed, and they had to move the box. She wouldn't let Graham handle it. She did it herself. Whatever is in there is the anchor." I showed the phone to Dana. "Harborstone," Dana said, reading the screen. "The name of the trust. If there is a physical box." I said, "There are physical documents. Originals. Maybe the original deed to the property showing where the money came from." Dana nodded. "But we can't get into a safe deposit box without a court order, and we don't have enough for a warrant yet. We need them to admit the trust exists and is relevant to you." "How do we do that?" I asked. "We bait the trap," Dana said. I waited until 2 o'clock. I wanted Ethan to be back from lunch, likely sitting in his office staring at the wall, which is what he did when he was stressed. I called his cell. He answered on the first ring. "Hannah?" His voice sounded ragged. "Hi, Ethan. Are you okay? I heard you lost your job. Indefinite leave," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Look, Ethan, I am tired. I am out of money. My parents aren't speaking to me. I can't keep fighting your mother's lawyers." There was a pause. I could hear the hope rising in his breathing. "So, what are you saying?" "I am saying I want to end this." I said, "I am willing to look at the agreement again, the promissory note, the NDA, whatever Marjorie wants." "Really?" Ethan breathed. "Hannah, that is the best news. We can fix this. I know we can. But I have conditions." I said, "Anything. Name it. I want to meet. Not at the house. I don't feel safe there. I want to meet at your father's office, in West Larkin, and I want everything on the table. If I'm going to sign my life away, I want to know exactly what I'm signing. I want a neutral mediator present, or at least my lawyer." "Done," Ethan said immediately. "I will call Mom right now." I hung up. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Marjorie. "Can you be at the West Larkin office at 5 o'clock? She asked. "No pleasantries. No hello." I said, "Good. We will have the papers ready. Bring your attorney if you must." "But Hannah?" "Yes? If you waste my time, I will make sure you never work in California again." She hung up. I looked at Dana. "They took the bait." I said. Dana smiled. "They are desperate. If they weren't, they would have made you wait a week to sweat you out. The fact that they want you in the room 3 hours from now means they are terrified you are going to find something else." The drive to West Larkin took 45 minutes. Dana drove. I sat in the passenger seat, rehearsing the plan. "Rule number 1, Dana said, her eyes on the highway. "Emotional control. You are not the jilted bride today. You are a stone wall." I nodded. "Stone wall. Rule number 2, you speak as little as possible. Silence makes people nervous. It makes them fill the dead air with truth." Check. "Rule number 3, you ask the specific questions we practiced. You don't ask about the wedding. You don't ask about the $10,000. You ask about the structure." I took a deep breath. I felt a strange calm settling over me. It was the calm of the executioner. I wasn't going there to save my relationship. I was going there to sever the head of the beast. The Hale family holdings office was in a glass monolith of a building. The lobby smelled of expensive sanitizer and money. We took the elevator to the top floor. The receptionist was expecting us. She led us into a conference room that was all chrome and glass, with a view of the valley that went on forever. Marjorie and Graham were already there. So was Ethan. And sitting at the head of the table was a man I didn't know. He was sharp, tailored, and had the dead eyes of a corporate fixer. "This is Arthur Sterling," Marjorie said, gesturing to the man, "our general counsel." Dana walked in and sat down without shaking hands. I followed her lead. I sat across from Ethan. He looked at me with a desperate, puppy-dog hope that made my stomach turn. "Let's keep this efficient." "Mr. Sterling said. He slid a thick stack of documents toward me. "Ms. Green," he began, his voice smooth. "The Hales are generous people. Despite the unpleasantness of the last week, they are willing to offer a settlement." He opened the folder. "This is a comprehensive release. It states that the wedding cancellation was a result of mutual incompatibility. It absolves the Hale family of any liability regarding your employment status. In exchange, the Hales will pay the outstanding $10,000 venue fee, and they will make a charitable donation to the Harbor Light Community Fund in your name, which should be sufficient to encourage the board to reinstate your position." I looked at the papers. It was a bribe, a clean, corporate bribe. "And the catch?" Dana asked. Mr. Sterling turned a page. "Ms. Green will sign a non-disclosure agreement covering all financial details of the wedding, as well as any knowledge of Hale family business operations she may have acquired during the relationship. She will also sign the promissory note acknowledging the initial debt, solely for internal record-keeping purposes. So I get my job back, but I admit to being a thief, and I agree to never speak about what I saw?" I asked. Mr. Sterling smiled. "It is a standard closing of accounts. Ms. Green, it allows everyone to move on." I looked at Marjorie. She was watching me with a hawk-like intensity. She thought she had won. She thought money and a job were all I wanted. I looked at Ethan. He gave me a small nod, as if to say, "See? It's okay." I closed the folder. "I can't sign this," I said. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Why not?" Graham asked, his voice booming. "It is more than you deserve." "Because it leaves out the most important asset," I said. I looked directly at Mr. Sterling. "Why does the Harborstone Revocable Trust own a property in Seabridge valued at $1,600,000? And why is Silverpin Title Services tied to my wedding account breach?" Mr. Sterling's face didn't crumble, but it tightened. A small muscle in his jaw jumped. He blinked once, a slow, deliberate blink. It was the reaction of a man who had just realized the person across the table was holding a grenade. Marjorie gasped. It was a sharp, involuntary intake of air. Graham slammed his hand on the table. "Who told you about Harborstone?" "It doesn't matter who told me," I said, keeping my voice level. "What matters is that I know the trust was amended the week you tried to force me to sign a prenup. I know the property was transferred to Blue Horizon Ventures 3 weeks ago using a suspended notary. And I know that Hale Family Holdings paid for my wedding using funds coded as Project Blue consulting fees." I slid the folder back across the table. "I am not here to sign an NDA. Marjorie, I am here to tell you that I know what you are hiding." Marjorie stood up. Her face was pale, her composure cracking. "Get out," she hissed. "Get her out of here." Ethan looked between us, total confusion on his face. "Mom? What is she talking about? What is Harborstone?" "Shut up, Ethan," Graham shouted. Mr. Sterling raised a hand. "Quiet, please." He looked at Dana. "Ms. Mercer, I assume you are advising your client that making accusations regarding private trusts is a dangerous path?" "And I assume," Dana replied, leaning forward, "that you know that spoliation of evidence in a case involving federal wire fraud, which is what the bank hack was, is a felony. We have the bank logs. Arthur, we know the money was layered. We know the login came from the same device that sent the defamation email, and now we know why." She stood up. "We are done here. We will see you in discovery. Come on, Hannah," she said to me. I stood up. I looked at Ethan one last time. He looked like he was watching a car crash in slow motion. "I didn't destroy your family, Ethan," I said softly. "I just turned on the lights." We walked out. We were in the parking lot, walking toward Dana's car, when I heard running footsteps behind us. "Hannah, wait." It was Ethan. He was out of breath. His tie loosened. "Don't," Dana said to me. "Keep walking." I stopped. I had to know. 5 minutes. I told Dana. She nodded and got into the car. Leaving the engine running, Ethan caught up to me. He grabbed my arm, then let go as if he had been burned. "What was that?" he asked. "What is Harborstone? Why did Dad scream at me?" "You really don't know?" I asked. No. Hannah, I swear. I thought this was just about the wedding money. I looked at him. I saw the genuine ignorance in his eyes, and in that moment, I realized the tragedy of Ethan Hale. He wasn't a partner in the crime. He was the furniture. Ethan, I said, did you sign documents for your father around October 12th? He rubbed his face. Maybe. Dad brings me stacks of things, tax forms, estate planning stuff. He says it is asset protection. He says if I don't sign, the government will take everything. And you read them? No, it is legal gibberish. I just sign where the sticky note is. I shook my head. You signed the amendment to the trust. Ethan, you authorized them to move the beach house. You made yourself the shield. If the IRS comes, or the FBI, your signature is on the fraud. Ethan went white. No, Dad wouldn't do that. He did it, I said, and he used our wedding as a cover to move the money. Ethan looked back at the glass tower. He looked like a child who had just learned there were monsters under the bed, and the monsters were his parents. What do I do? He whispered. I don't know. Ethan, I said, but you need to find a lawyer who isn't Arthur Sterling, and you need to stop signing things. I turned to go. Hannah, he said. His voice broke. I still love you. I looked at him. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant, like a memory of a pain I used to have. I know, I said, but love isn't enough when you are standing in quicksand. I got into the car. Dana put it in drive. He didn't know. I said as we pulled onto the highway, ignorance is not a defense, Dana said. It is just a weakness. We got back to Seabridge late. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy and wet. Dana dropped me off at Lena's apartment complex. Get some sleep, she said. Tomorrow we file the lawsuit. I walked up the stairs to the apartment. I was exhausted in a way that went down to my bones. My body felt heavy, but my mind was racing. The look on Mr. Sterling's face, the panic in Marjorie's eyes. I reached the door and fumbled for my key. Then I saw it. A thick manila envelope was sitting on the doormat. It had no postage, no return address, just my name, Hannah, written in block letters and black marker. I froze. I looked down the hallway. It was empty. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy. I went inside and locked the door. I sat on the floor of the entryway and tore it open. Inside was a stack of photocopied emails. They weren't clean prints. They were photos of a computer screen, taken hastily, slightly angled. I picked up the top one. It was dated 6 months ago. From Graham Hale to Arthur Sterling. Subject: Project Blue, Asset Liquidity. Arthur, the Harborstone position is becoming untenable. With the investigation into the coastal permits heating up in Briar Cove, we need to insulate the primary asset. We need to move the property out of the trust before the end of the fiscal year. I read the next one. From Marjorie to Graham. Subject: The wedding distraction. We can use the wedding expenses to mask the liquidity transfer. If we run the vendor payments through the LLC as consulting, we can wash the cash needed for the Blue Horizon buy-in. It cleans the money and gives us a tax write-off. And the next one, from Graham to Marjorie, dated the day of the rehearsal dinner. Subject: The loose end. She won't sign the prenup. She is asking questions about the checking account. We have to cut the cord. Trigger the default on the venue payment. Make it look like her incompetence. If we cancel the wedding, she loses standing to see the books. Use the silver pin protocol to lock her out. I stared at the paper. Use the silver pin protocol. This was it. This was the smoking gun. They had written it down. They had discussed destroying me like they were discussing a merger. I turned to the last page. It wasn't an email. It was a handwritten note on a piece of yellow legal pad paper. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. They used you as the distraction. The wedding was never going to happen. They just needed the timeline to match the transfer. Run. I looked at the handwriting. It wasn't Vivian's. It wasn't Ethan's. It looked cramped, familiar. I realized who it was. It was the receptionist at Hale Family Holdings, the quiet woman in the lobby who had watched us walk in, the one who had probably been invisible to Graham and Marjorie for 20 years. I held the papers against my chest. I understood now. The $10,000 wasn't the crime, it was the camouflage. They had burned my happiness to create a smokescreen for a $1,600,000 heist. They thought I was just a girl who wanted a white dress. They thought I would cry and go away. I pulled out my phone. I took a picture of the emails and sent them to Dana. Then I typed a message to her. I am not running. I am calling the Civic Circle. I stood up. The gala was tomorrow night. Marjorie was supposed to receive her award. The entire town would be there. It was time to give them a show they hadn't paid for. The Seabridge Civic Circle Holiday Gala was the kind of event where the champagne was vintage, the smiles were porcelain, and the charity was a tax write-off. It was held in the grand ballroom of the Cliffside Hotel. A room of crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the black, churning ocean. I stood in the foyer, checking my reflection in a gilt-framed mirror. I wasn't wearing white. I was wearing a dress of midnight blue, structured and sharp, the kind of armor a woman wears when she is done negotiating. Beside me, Dana Mercer checked her watch. "It is 7:15, she said. "The board is in the green room. The Hales are holding court near the bar." I took a breath. My heart wasn't racing. That was the strange part. For a week, I had lived in a state of high-velocity panic, vibrating with the fear of losing everything. But now that I had lost it, the fiancé, the job, the reputation, the fear was gone. In its place was a cold, mathematical clarity. I checked my clutch. Inside was a single, slim folder. "Are you ready?" Dana asked. "I am not here to cause a scene." "Dana," I said, smoothing the fabric of my dress, "I am here to correct the record." Dana smiled, a tight, dangerous expression. "Then let's go to work." We moved through the crowd. I felt the eyes on me immediately. Seabridge was a small pond, and I was the bleeding fish. I heard the whispers ripple outward as I passed. "Is that her? The one who stole the money? I thought she left town." I didn't look down. I didn't flinch. I walked with my head high, making direct eye contact with the women who had gossiped about me in the grocery store aisle. They looked away first. We headed straight for the green room, a private lounge reserved for the gala's organizers and VIPs. The door was guarded by security. But Dana flashed her credentials. "Legal counsel for a scheduled meeting with the Harbor Light Board," she said. The guard checked his list. He looked confused, but he opened the door. Inside, the leadership of the Harbor Light Community Fund was gathering for a pre-event toast. David, my executive director, was there. So was Evelyn Cross, the board member who had suspended me. They were laughing, holding flutes of sparkling wine. The laughter died instantly when I walked in. "Hannah," David said, putting his glass down, "you shouldn't be here. This is a private event. I am a staff member on administrative leave." "David," I said, my voice steady, "and as per the bylaws, I am entitled to present exculpatory evidence to the board before any final termination decision is made. I am exercising that right." Now, Evelyn stepped forward. Her cashmere wrap slipped off her shoulder. "This is hardly the time. Hannah, we are about to go on stage to present the Philanthropist of the Year award to Marjorie Hale. That is exactly why it is the time," I said. I walked to the coffee table in the center of the room and opened my folder. I laid out 3 documents. "Document 1, I said, pointing to the bank log. "This is the forensic audit from my bank. It proves that the device used to drain the $10,000 from the wedding account was not mine. It was accessed via a password reset using a fraudulent recovery email." I laid down the second document. "Document 2. This is the metadata from the anonymous email sent to you. David." The one accusing me of theft? It originated from the exact same device signature as the bank hack. David frowned. He leaned in, his eyes scanning the paper. "And document 3, I said, laying down the internal email from Hale Family Holdings, the one the receptionist had slid under my door. "This is an email from Graham Hale to Arthur Sterling. In it, he explicitly discusses using my wedding expenses, categorized as Project Blue Consulting, to mask a liquidity transfer for a property deal. It also details the strategy to trigger the default on the venue payment to discredit me. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC system. David picked up the email. His hands were shaking slightly. This says they planned it, he whispered. They used me to launder money. David, I said, and when I refused to sign an NDA, they used you to destroy my credibility so I couldn't testify against them. I looked at Evelyn Cross. You suspended me based on a defamation campaign orchestrated by the very woman you are honoring tonight. If you go on that stage and give Marjorie Hale an award while holding this evidence, you are not just complicit in my defamation. You are accessories to a federal financial crime. Evelyn stared at the papers. Her face had lost its polished veneer. She looked trapped. What do you want? Hannah? She asked, her voice tight. Money? A settlement? No. I said, I want you to read the file, and I want you to think very carefully about whose side you are on when the subpoenas land tomorrow morning. I turned to Dana. Give them the copies. Dana handed a thick envelope to David. We will wait in the library, she said. You have 10 minutes before the Hales expect you on stage. We walked out of the green room and down the hall to the library, a smaller, darker room where Marjorie and Graham were holding their own private court before the ceremony. Arthur Sterling, their attorney, was standing by the door. He saw me coming and stepped into my path. Ms. Green, he said, his voice low. If you enter this room, I will have you arrested for trespassing. I am an invited guest of the Harbor Light Board. I said, and I think your clients will want to hear what I have to say before the FBI hears it. Arthur hesitated. In that split second of doubt, I walked past him and pushed the mahogany doors open. Marjorie was sitting on a velvet sofa, adjusting her diamond earrings. Graham was pouring a scotch. Ethan was standing by the window, looking out at the dark ocean. They all froze. Marjorie was the first to recover. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed, like I was a stain on the carpet she had forgotten to clean. You have a lot of nerve. Hannah, she said, I thought we made our position clear in West Larkin. You did. I said, you offered to buy my silence. I declined. I walked to the center of the room. I didn't sit. I stood tall, letting my presence fill the space. I am here to offer you an off-ramp. Marjorie, Graham snorted. You are offering us? You have nothing. You are a broke, unemployed girl with a delusions of grandeur. I have the emails. Graham, I said. The silence that followed was different from the silence in the green room. This was the silence of a heart stopping. Graham put his glass down. He missed the coaster, and the crystal clinked loudly against the wood. What emails? He asked. The ones from your server. I said, the ones where you discuss Project Blue. The ones where you talk about moving the Seabridge Beach House out of the Harborstone Trust to hide it from the coastal permit investigation. The ones where you tell Marjorie to use the Silver Pin protocol to lock me out of my bank account. I looked at Ethan. He was staring at his father, his face draining of color. I know about the notary, Silas Vane. I continued. I know he was suspended the week he signed your deed. I know the entire transfer is fraudulent. Marjorie stood up. She walked toward me, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She stopped inches from my face. I could smell her expensive perfume, the scent of roses and old money. You stole internal documents, she hissed. That is theft. It is whistleblowing. I said, and I have already sent copies to my attorney, to the bank, and to the state regulator. Marjorie's eyes widened. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flicker behind the mask. What do you want? She asked. $10,000? $50? $100? I shook my head. I don't want your money. Marjorie, I want accountability. I pointed to the door. I want you to walk out there, get on that stage, and retract the allegations you made against me. I want you to admit there was no theft, only a banking error on your end. I want you to instruct Arthur to withdraw the threats against Harbor Light so I can have my job back. And I want a written statement, signed by both of you, clearing my name. Marjorie stared at me. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. It was a cruel, pitying smile. You poor thing, she said softly. You really think you can beat us? She stepped back, smoothing her dress. We are the Hales. Hannah, we built this town. We own the bank. We own the board. You have some stolen emails? Fine. We will say they are forged. We will bury you in litigation for 10 years. You will be bankrupt before you ever see a courtroom. She laughed. A light, airy sound. You could have had everything. You know, if you had just signed the paper, if you had just been a good little wife, we take care of our own. But you wanted to be independent. Well, look at you now, alone. I realized then that she was telling the truth. Not about winning, but about who they were. They didn't love people. They acquired them. To Marjorie, I wasn't a person. I was a failed acquisition, an asset that hadn't performed. I looked at Ethan. He was looking at the floor. He wouldn't look at me. He was still signing the papers in his mind, still protecting the inheritance. Okay, I said quietly. I gave you a chance. I turned to Dana, who was standing by the door. Do it. Dana nodded. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen once. What did you do? Graham demanded. Stepping forward, I just sent the full evidentiary packet, Dana said calmly, to the State Attorney General's office, the IRS whistleblower line, and the Briar Cove County District Attorney. She looked at her watch. And I just carbon copied the Ethics Committee of Harbor Light and the Governance Chair of the Civic Circle. Marjorie's face went white. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already did. I said. The sound of applause drifted in from the ballroom. The ceremony was starting. That is your cue. Marjorie, I said, enjoy your award. It will be the last one you ever get. I turned and walked out of the library. I didn't run. I walked with the rhythm of a woman who had just set down a heavy load. The ballroom was packed. 300 people in tuxedos and gowns were seated at round tables, watching the stage. I walked to the side of the room. Near the podium steps, I caught David's eye. He was standing near the stage, holding the envelope Dana had given him. He looked sick. The MC, a local news anchor, was speaking. And now, to present our Philanthropist of the Year award, please welcome the Executive Director of the Harbor Light Community Fund, David Ross. David walked onto the stage. The applause was polite. He adjusted the microphone. He looked out at the crowd, then at the Hales table in the front row. Marjorie was sitting there, smiling, pretending her world hadn't just ended. David cleared his throat. Thank you, he said. His voice was thin. Before we proceed with the award, I would like to invite one of our senior staff members to say a few words about the community impact of this year's fundraising. He gestured to the side of the stage. Hannah Green. A ripple went through the room. Heads turned. Marjorie's smile froze. She hadn't expected this. She thought she had scared me off. I walked up the stairs. The spotlight hit me, blinding and hot. I stepped to the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw my parents in the back, shrinking into their chairs. I saw Lena standing by the bar, giving me a thumbs up. I took a breath. Thank you. David, I said. My voice didn't shake. It boomed through the speakers, clear and resonant. I am standing here tonight not just as a program manager, but as a resident of Seabridge. We talk a lot about community, about trust, about integrity. I looked directly at Marjorie Hale in the front row. Her eyes were wide, pleading with me silently to stop. Recently, my own integrity was called into question. I said, allegations were made regarding financial impropriety. My wedding was canceled. My reputation was attacked. The room was deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop. I am here to announce that as of tonight, I am resigning from my public-facing role at Harbor Light. A gasp went through the crowd. I am resigning, I continued, because I can no longer serve an organization that is being used as a shield for private corruption. I saw Graham start to stand up, but Arthur Sterling pulled him back down. I have submitted documentation to the board and to state authorities regarding a campaign of harassment, financial sabotage, and fraud orchestrated to conceal the illegal transfer of assets within the Hale Family Holdings Trust. The room didn't explode. It froze. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the ballroom. This matter is now under formal review by the Attorney General, I said. And while the truth is often uncomfortable, it is the only foundation upon which a real community can be built. I stepped back from the microphone. Thank you. I walked off the stage. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, the sound of a phone dropping. Then, a whisper. Then, a roar of murmurs. I walked straight down the center aisle. I didn't look back, but I could feel the energy in the room shifting. It was a physical thing. The social oxygen was draining away from the Hale table. People who had been leaning in to talk to Marjorie were now leaning back, creating a perimeter of isolation. Phones were coming out. The news was traveling at the speed of light. Did she say fraud? Did she say Attorney General? I reached the double doors at the back of the ballroom. Hannah. I stopped. I knew the voice. I turned around. Ethan was running down the aisle after me. He looked frantic, his hair messed up, his eyes wild. He stopped a few feet away, panting. Hannah, wait. Please. I looked at him. He looked like a stranger. Ethan, go back inside, I said. Your parents need you. You can't leave like this, he said. You just blew up everything. My dad is having chest pains. My mom is... Hannah, everyone is watching. I know. I said, is there any way to fix this? He asked, desperate. Can we handle it quietly? Maybe issue a retraction? I can get them to pay you. I can get them to do anything. Just stop the investigation. I looked at him with a profound sadness. He still thought this was a negotiation. He still thought money could fix the rot in his foundation. I didn't destroy them. Ethan, I said softly. What? I didn't destroy them. I repeated. I stopped protecting them. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He stood there, paralyzed, a man caught between the comfortable lie and the jagged truth. I turned around and pushed the doors open. The night air outside was biting cold. It smelled of salt and rain. I walked out of the hotel and down the stone steps to the valet stand. I didn't have a car. I realized I had left the rental with Dana. I started walking. I walked down the long, winding driveway toward the main road. My heels clicked on the pavement. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I was alone. I had no job. I had no fiancé. I had burned my bridges with the most powerful family in town, and likely with my own parents, who would never forgive me for the embarrassment. I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night. I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent next month. But as I walked, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of the Hales' expectations, the weight of their judgment, the weight of trying to be perfect for people who only wanted me to be silent. It was all gone. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out. It was a text from Dana. They've started calling. Sterling is trying to cut a deal with the DA already. They are scared. Hannah. They are really scared. I stared at the screen. The blue light illuminated the darkness around me. I looked back up the hill at the hotel. The lights were blazing, but I knew the party was over. The Hales were in a room somewhere, shouting at lawyers, watching their empire fracture. I put the phone back in my bag. I pulled my coat tighter around me and turned toward the lights of the town below. I was broke. I was single. I was scandalous. But for the first time in my life, I was free. And I was no longer the person they could break. I took a step into the dark, and then another, and I didn't look back. Thank you for listening to They Ruined My Wedding Over $10,000. I Destroyed Their $1.6 million Secret. I hope Hannah's journey from heartbreak to retribution resonated with you. It is a reminder that the truth is the most powerful weapon we have, and that sometimes you have to burn the bridge to find your own path. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from a quiet coffee shop in Seattle, a busy train in Tokyo, or maybe a cozy living room in London? Please leave a comment below and share your location. And if you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice, drama, and resilience coming your way. Don't forget to like, share, and let us know your thoughts in the comments in English. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, stay strong and tell your truth.